This is in course, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lisa was very polite, saying, I have served many years. I'm actually a priest for 45 years this month. I didn't realize how long it was till the other day. And I also want to add my Happy Mother's Day to the mothers here. I want to acknowledge my mother and the mothers that are living and deceased. Those of us who have had great relationships with our mother, those of us have terrible relationships with our mother. But we all celebrate the gift of motherhood in the broadest sense. And so happy Mother's Day to all of those. Speaking of mothers, I lived on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for 12 years that my mother made, lousy sandwiches that you take every day to school. You have the opportunity, and I'm pointing to Laura because I see her there. I wanted to make a plug, I hope it's all right, Lisa, for people that want to get involved in the food ministry. And you could be motherly, if not to confine making food to women, but it's an opportunity to make 200 sandwiches after every liturgy, and we have other great food programs and great programs to get involved in. And it's a great way to take from what we do at this table, being fed, to helping other people that need to be fed. So I invite you to please see Laura after the liturgy. Lisa told me to introduce myself and my background. I only did parochial ministry for 2 years of the 45 years I've been a priest. All my work has been in nonprofit work in various places in various countries. And I'd like to talk about motherhood in the context of that experience. My first experience was at Red Cross, and the first experience I'd like to share was at Red Cross. The year before 9/11, it was the year 2000 in August, and there was an earthquake in Turkey. And I was sent to Turkey. 20,000 people died in that 6.5 earthquake. And what stunned me the most is seeing little women and grandmothers trying to move boulders bigger than them to get to their children that they could talk to but couldn't reach. And they stayed all night, and they'll talk to the children on day 2, and they stay all night and talk to the children on day 3. And slowly over the week, there were no more voices to be heard, but mothers were there, relentlessly, unconditional love for the very last moments the children lived. That experience of motherhood was really overwhelming to me and just changed the way I looked at the words of unconditional love. Mothers die. Another experience was the war in Bosnia, when many young men in this little Muslim enclave outside of Sarajevo told us about being killed, how they had to watch their mothers be raped and their mothers killed by the Orthodox Catholics out of Serbia. The enclave was practically wiped out, but the children live. Their mothers were seeing, what they saw happen to their mothers was unimaginable. Mothers who suffer great cause in war. Right now in Gaza, for example, 70% of the people being killed are women and children, their children. Mother's love is unconditional. Next, I was in Africa, in Zimbabwe, on a human rights mission. I ran an organization called Physicians for Human Rights at Harvard, and I was sent to Zimbabwe to do a human rights investigation on how Mugabe was stealing the PEPFAR money that was meant for AIDS. And my job was to meet this one particular day a group of women, about 15 women, to talk to them about their lack of medication, that they were not receiving the medication that the U.S. government was paying for. I sat down to the lunch, and I started chowing down on my sandwich. There's a sandwich theme running through here. I sat down and started eating my sandwich, and I noticed that the 15 women sitting around me weren't eating at all. And I thought, maybe I'm supposed to say grace or something. I don't know what they're expecting. So I said to the lady next to me, why isn't anybody eating? She said, we're going to take those sandwiches, and that one sandwich tonight will feed our whole family. Women who suffer because of the love of their children. And most recently, I was president of an organization out of Chicago here called Nuestros Pequeños Hermanos. We ran orphanages and hospitals in 9 Latin American countries and Haiti and the Caribbean. Overwhelmingly, the 4,500 children that lived with us were abandoned by their mothers. Not because they weren't loved, because they were loved so much. The mothers knew they couldn't feed their children, they couldn't take care of their children, and they wanted them to grow up and have food, be healthy, and have an education. And they would bring their children to NPH and ask NPH to care for them. The unconditional love of a mother. In today's gospel, Raymond Brown, the great theologian on St. John, talks about this, what he called the motherly discourse. It's also called Christ's farewell discourse. We started reading it last week when Lisa preached. And Jesus last week was talking about the Father and his love for each other, kind of reminding the Father that he needed to love him because he loved him. Today, the motherly part of the discourse, as Ray Brown talks about it, is that Jesus prays for those who he was given. He prays for us also, for those that follow the disciples, and they take the word to them. This motherly prayer is an indication of Jesus' incredible, unconditional love for us. Easter came and went 8 weeks ago. And I remember going to the pharmacy on Monday when I was preparing my sermon and sang the pharmacist at Walgreens on Illinois. He said to me, "Frank, how you doing? I haven't seen you in a while." And I said, "Oh, I'm fine." He said, "I don't think I've seen you since before Easter." He said, "What's happening?" I said, "No, nothing, same old, same old." Same old, same old. I walked away feeling so ashamed of myself, such an indictment. Here we celebrated the resurrection of Jesus Christ, which is to change our lives, and I am same old, same old. How about you? Are you really any different than you were 7, 8, 9 weeks ago? Really any different? Did anything change? Jesus appears over and over to us. He appears here today in a very, very real way in his word and in bread and wine. Are we any different? I was really ashamed of myself. The appearances of Jesus have three possibilities or three purposes. Jesus appears over and over again. He's not seen on the road to Emmaus. He's not seen by the guy making fish on the seashore. He's not seen in any of the appearances he makes. He goes out and reaches to Thomas, particularly because Thomas needed special care. He takes his appearances to Galilee for Matthew, and the same appearances for John and Luke are in Jerusalem. The stories are very similar. The places are different. It's because Jesus wants to meet people where they are. He comes to us where we are. He doesn't expect us to find him. He comes to us and finds us. Does that appearance, that change make any difference? He comes to the disciples. How does it change them? They go from being scared men that sit in the room and send the ladies out to tomb to check out the tomb. They lock themselves in the upper room. The ladies really were getting in trouble here. They come back, and then Jesus appears. And the disciples increasingly recognize Jesus throughout those weeks, from Emmaus to the seashore. They're quicker and quicker to recognize Jesus Christ. And they're quicker and quicker to become fearless rather than fearful. How about us? Are we any quicker at realizing Jesus Christ when we walk out of here and see somebody that needs us? We see a mother from Venezuela on the curb on Michigan Avenue. Do we see anything different? Do we see Jesus appear to us in many different ways? As for me and for us, Jesus comes as unexpected. Remember Elijah waiting for God to come in the thunder, waiting for God to come in the storm, waiting for God to come in an earthquake, and God comes in a whisper, in the most unexpected way. He finds God. The same is true for us. For God will no longer be confined to a body, to flesh and blood. God is no longer confined. Jesus is no longer confined to space and time. Jesus comes to us differently, like we do not expect it. He does come in bread and wine. He comes in word made flesh. He comes to us. Do we recognize him when he comes? I'd like to tell you a story. Once upon a time was a young man of brilliant heart, noble spirit, who really sought to understand what it is, the meaning of life, how to be successful in life. He had a dream, and in the dream he heard a voice that said, "Grab what you can. Grab what you can." He knew it had to be something harder, something different, something altogether more satisfying. He knew it meant going after in life the things you cannot grab. And so he sought out holy men and holy women all over to help him learn how to be successful, how to find joy, real joy in life. He ended up in Egypt, went to see this monk that had spent his entire life in a cave, praying. His whole life. He wanted to know what this man found in this cave to have the stick-to-itiveness, to spend his entire life in a cave seeking God. So he asked the monk. The monk sat back, brushed his monk beard, sitting on his monk recliner. He said, one day a rabbit ran by the entrance to the cave, and my dog went after him and chased him. They went over there, that field, then they started climbing the rough road with all the thicket, and it got tougher and tougher, and all the while my dog is barking, and other dogs are joining in the chase. They're following the commotion. But when the terrain got too hard, all of them dropped out, all but my dog. And the monk became silent. And the kid was like, I came all the way to Egypt for that? What is it that made you stay here? And he says, you're missing the point. Why did my rabbits pursue the chase when all the others dropped out? My dog is the only one that saw the rabbit. My dog is the only one that saw the rabbit. The other dogs followed the commotion. Once we see the rabbit, we cannot but pursue it. Once we experience the risen Christ, we cannot but pursue him. God comes to us in always ways more than we expected. God is closer to us than we ever dreamed. Pentecost is next week. Certainly God can do his windy hovering over us. Certainly God can change us so that we never say, I'm just the same old. Out of slimy mud, God made creation. He made creation. Out of Babel-speaking people, God made Pentecost-speaking people of joy. Surely God can hover over us and do the same and make us people of joy, so much so that leaving here we might look like people that were partying all night. Never do we want to say, just the same old. God help us.